yo me llamo Ruby Serrano. Today we're going to push you to the limit so you can find the limit.
Now, before we get started, there's a couple of key points we want to review over with you.
The first one is to always remember when you're beginning a problem to always try to plug in.
The second one would be if plugging in the number doesn't work and you get a denominator is a 0, then you have to use your algebraic skills.
Now there are 3 algebraic methods that will mostly be used when you're solving for these limits. The first one is to factor whenever you have quadratics. The second one would be to find common denominators when you have fractions. And the third one would be to use a conjugate when you have square roots.
Now we're going to solve for 2 problems here. One will be easy and another will be a little bit more challenging. We hope that we really teach you how to do these limit problems and that you learn from us.
Have fun! Okay, the first problem we're going to be doing with you is a fairly simple problem, but it's just to get you started on how to solve using algebra. Now the first problem that we're going to be doing is the limit as x approaches 4 of 2x squared minus 2x minus 24 over x squared minus 16. Now the first step that you do is plug in. So we're going to go ahead and plug in 4 to each of the x's that we have. Now you want to start with your denominator because that would be your signal to go on with algebra or continue using that. So 4 squared is 16 minus 16. Uh-oh, this gives you 0. So what does this mean? Time to use some algebra. So we're going to go back to our original problem and get started with our algebra. Now the first thing that we're going to do is try to factor out the different quadratics that we have. Now in the first one in the numerator, you see that there's a common multiple in 2x squared, 2x, and 24, and that's 2. So the first thing that we're going to do is factor out a 2 from each of them. If you factor out the 2 from 2x squared, you get x squared. And if you factor out from 2x, you're left with x. And if you factor the 2 from 24, you're left with 12. Now in your denominator, you see something a little bit different because you see a quadratic that's a difference of squares. So in the first one, you're gonna have a plus, and in the second one, you're gonna have a minus. Now, if you find the square root of x squared, you get x, and if you find the square root of 16, you get 4. Now you factored out the denominator, and now you just need to finish factoring out the numerator. So your next step would be to try to factor out this part of the numerator. You already have your 2, so your next part is what 2 numbers could you get that would multiply to give you negative 12 and would add to give you negative 1, because you know there's an imaginary 1 there. Now the 2 numbers that would be most reasonable would be a 3 and a 4. Now what sign would you put in front of the 4 and in front of the 3 that when you add them you will get negative 1? Well, the bigger number is the one that has to have the negative and the smaller one has to have the positive. Now that you've finished factoring out your equation, you can begin to try to solve for the limit. Now, after you factor out both sides, you see something special happen because x minus 4 in the denominator cancels out with x minus 4 in the numerator. And then you're left with the limit as x approaches 4 is 2 times x plus 3 over x plus 4. And the next thing that you do to finish off solving would be to go back to your original method and plug in your 4 to your x's. So you're going to get the limit as x approaches 4 of 2 times 4 plus 3 over 4 plus 4. And you get the limit as x approaches 4 of 2 times 7 over 8, which becomes the limit as x approaches 4 of 14/8. That's your final answer, but it can be reduced, so you would simplify it to 7/4 to give you your final product. The limit as x approaches 4 is 7/4. Now that was a fairly simple problem, and it was just a little bit of algebra, but now Larissa's going to get into a harder problem where you have to do even more algebra to find your limit.
Thank you, Ruby. Now, I will be doing a little bit of more challenging problem that will challenge your algebra skills. So, the problem that I will be doing will be to find the limit as x is approaching 0 for the square root of 4 plus x minus the square root of 4 all over x. Now our first method is to plug it in and see if this will work. So the limit of x is approaching 0. We plug in 0 for every x that we see in the problem. The square root of 4 plus 0 is 4 minus the square root of 4. This will give you 0/0. And this means that you cannot use the plug-in method because the denominator will be a 0. So let's continue on with doing the algebra and using our algebra skills. So let's rewrite the problem and see what algebra skills we can use. So right here we see that the square root of 4 can be reduced to just 2. So the limit as x is approaching 0 can just be rewritten as the square root of 4 plus x minus 2 all over x. In this section right here in the numerator, we see a conjugate. So the rule for this is that you can multiply this fraction, the square root of 4 plus x minus 2 all over x, times this, but change the sign to a plus. So you multiply 4 plus x plus 2 divided by 4 plus x plus 2. Okay, so if we multiply the top here, we see that there's a difference of squares because it's the square root of 4 plus x minus 2 and the square root of 4 plus x plus 2. So the limit as x is approaching 0, and the top will just give you, in the top it will just give you 4 plus x minus 4 because negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. In the bottom, we will just have x times the square root of 4 plus x plus 2. So let's continue the work on over here. Now we left off with the limit of x as is approaching 0 with 4 plus x minus 4. So right here, we can just cancel out the 4 and the positive 4. And so in the bottom, we are left with x times the square root of 4 plus x plus 2. So now we see that the x's can cancel out as well. So if we write the problem, in the top we're just left with 1 over the square root of 4 plus x plus 2. So now let's see if the plug-in method works. If we plug in 0 to 4 plus to the x, we get 1 over the square root of 4 plus 0 plus 2. The square root of 4 plus 0 is just simply the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and your answer as the limit is approaching 0 will just be 1/4.
Uh-oh, here comes Mom. Gotta go.